You just are telling me that there was an entity inside of you. You felt it crawl up your neck. You're telling me that you had an exorcism and you're telling us not to be afraid. Yes. Let me dive into what this demon was, where it stemmed from, what a demon actually is. To get comfy. Oh my goodness. Hello, welcome back to the channel, and if you are tuning in, welcome to why am I sounding so formal? Oh my gosh. Okay. Let's get it together, Brittany. It is New Year's Eve today, and I can't believe it. Like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? 2023 is already over. I feel like a lot of you are probably feeling the same way. I'm really excited for 2024. I'm not sure when I'll have this video out, but Happy New Year whenever it is you are happening on this video. But let's dive right into the meat and potatoes of today's episode. We are talking about demons. What are they? What are they? Are they real? Do they exist? Are they just something that was made up in fiction? Or is there truth behind it? Let's dive into today's episode. I think it's important to talk about these dark things as well. As much as I am for love and light, we got to dabble into the dark side. We got to dabble into all of it. I mean, we are here having this human experience, and this is all about polarity. This experience is all about polarity. The good, the bad, the light, the dark. It's, you know, I believe that it's within us all. I believe that light and dark reside within us. I believe that heaven and hell reside within us. And I think that God and the devil reside within us. And I think that, it's important to understand all sides of things. I'm going to give you a little bit of a backstory on me and my perception, just so you maybe get a better understanding of where I'm coming from. Because everyone's perspectives are different, right? And everyone is going to have different perspectives on different topics based on their personal experience. So here's a few examples of my experience, just so that you guys better understand where I'm coming from with this topic. And then we are going to get into what they are based on what was kind of presented to me. Yeah. So I grew up very religious. I grew up in a really, really strict Catholic household. So there was a lot of fear instilled in me when it came to spirit, when it came to the other side, when it came to, you know, the afterlife, because I fully believed in demons. I believed that they were real. I believed that the devil was real. I was really made to fear. Like, I feared God. You know what I mean? I feared God. And I also feared the evil associated with it. I had many paranormal experiences growing up. I would see images, not images, but I would see spirits. I'd see spirits. They would, you know, I'd see them with not only my mind's eye, but my physical eye when I was young. And because I didn't understand what was going on, there was so much fear surrounding it. So I grew up believing in demons, like wholeheartedly believing in demons, and being really, really afraid of them. I remember watching The Exorcist when I was in grade 7, and holy shit, I needed to sleep with the light on for like probably 2 months after that. Like, holy crap, because I believed that was real. I believed everything I saw there was real. And some of you guys are probably thinking like, isn't it real, Brittany? Isn't it real? Like, people have had experiences with things like that. And I'm not trying to negate anybody's experiences with this, okay, at all, because I know everyone has very real experiences. But yeah, I need to kind of continue before I could dive into that a little bit more. But they were very real for me. Fast forward. I found spirituality. I no longer associated with religion, as it no longer aligned with me. It no longer resonated with me. And I found my own spiritual journey, because to me, spirituality is the journey of coming home to self. It's the healing journey. It's the journey of growth and evolution and your own personal experience with spirit. So when I say I found spirituality, that's what I mean. I don't mean New Age spirituality. I just want to make that clear, because to me, New Age spirituality is its own religion, and I don't conform to any religion. I do see truth in all religions, but yeah, just for that clarifier, if you are new here. So I found spirituality, and I knew that I've always known that the other side was real because of my experience, because of my past experiences, because of my experiences as a child, because I had the experiences of seeing spirit. Again, I was really fearful of it at the time because I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't understand what was going on. So I just associated it with a negative experience. And in hindsight, I realized that a lot of what I experienced, there was nothing to fear, but because I didn't know any better, and because I didn't really have like a guiding hand to support me in that realm of things, I feared it. And I came to realize through spirituality and through my mediumship development specifically that there are no such thing as demons. And I'll get into that in a second, because I now do believe there are demons, okay? But this is how my perspective shifted. And this was a very important perspective shift, okay? And I owe this to my mediumship instructors. A little shout out to them. By the way, medium Michael Mayo and medium Megan Elisa on TikTok, and yeah, on TikTok. They're really great. They are incredible. They're really, really great mediums, like really, really good mediums, really good at what they do. And they teach, so that's the courses that I've been in for my mediumship development. And yeah, Chef's Kiss, the oakbridgeinstitute.org or .com, something like that. I'll tag them. I'll tag their website below. And do you know what? I will tag their TikToks below as well. Send them love. But anyways, they really, really were huge in my perspective shifting on my journey, because going into mediumship development, I fully believed in demons, and I had that fear still instilled in me. And through development, they are like, hey, Britt, like, we talk to dead people all the time. And you know what, Britt? Our friends talk to dead people all the time too, because as mediums, like, they have other friends that are also mediums. So they just all talk to the dead. And they're like, and do you know what? They never, ever, ever send us anything but love. They never send us anything but love. There's nothing to fear. It's all wrong. Like what people think demons are, what people fear. There's no reason to fear. Right, baby girl? My cat joining me, for those who are not watching. Yes, my sweet baby girl. Anyways, and I really, really respected them because they're really freaking good at what they do, and they're really good people. Like they have really, really good hearts, and you know, and I see that, and I respect that, and I look up to that, and they take what they do very seriously. And anyways, because of how much I respected them too, and I'm very open, like even though I have my perspectives, because my perspectives on demons was that they were real, because I had really scary experiences also as a kid. So because of my experiences, to me, they were really real. So for me to even question my own views was really big. So that was a really big perspective shift. And through development, I came to the understanding, like, demons are not real. They're not real. There is no such thing as negative entities, negative this, negative that, as within, so without. And what I thought, what made sense to me was, you know, when there's like a lot of bad energy at a place, for example, let's say a house where a murder happened, there's going to be a lot of energy, and that energy can manifest into its own conscious being. And I still do believe that, actually. Like, I still do believe that that's possible. And I feel like, and I know that other people feel this as well. Can I prove it to you? No. But that's what I feel is true. And yeah. And I feel it can manifest into its own conscious being. And I thought that, you know, those can manifest into like poltergeists, and when you get those like scary things that, you know, happen. However, they're harmless. Like, they're really harmless, and you can clean it out. You can clean out the energy, and you can banish it. You can give it love. Actually, the best thing to do is love it, because love conquers all. Like, truly, truly, truly. I know that sounds so cheesy, but no. When you send something love, because when something is so evil, it's because it hasn't been given love. Like, that's why. And love conquers all. I'll get back into that after, but when I explain more so what a demon actually is, because they are real. They are real. Anyways, so I then had the perspective of they're just not real. And I truly believed that. And I was partly correct. Like, that perspective is in my opinion, true. Like, that perspective is true to an extent. And I'll explain how that has shifted. Because the way demons are portrayed, the way we believe demons are, the way they're feared, the way, you know, in movies, people do these exorcisms and all of these things. The way people go about it is wrong. The way people portray it is false. Demons are not true the way they are portrayed to be, if that makes sense. Like, what we think demons are, what the media makes demons out to be, what religion makes demons out to be, is false. So their perspective in that sense is true. Like, I agree. And spirit, when you connect with spirit, they are right when it's like, it's nothing but love on the other side. It's nothing but love. So when you go into it open with love, and it's important that your energy you're putting out is love, because what you put out is what you attract. Because if you put out fear, you might attract something of more of a lower vibration. You might attract something that you create within your own mind that scares you. Do you know what I mean? Because you're putting that energy out. It's not like spirit is wanting to come and get you. You create all of your experiences. So when you're wanting to connect with spirit, there's nothing to fear. The only thing there is to fear is the things you make up in your head, because you can manifest those things into your existence, but it's simply because you are creating it. You know what I mean? It's not the other way around. So anyways, that's important because my perspective really shifted. Fast forward, I had a huge fucking spiritual awakening in 2023. I thought I was already spiritually awakened, because spiritual awakenings happen in layers. They really, really do. But I had like a big catalyst this year, and a lot of like, holy shit, a huge awakening. And with that awakening, I did a couple ayahuasca ceremonies this year. I did 4 nights of medicine, and not that that detail matters, but I felt called. It was my first time. And on one of those nights, during my journey, and this is crazy, I felt something crawl up the back of my throat. Like, I physically felt this, and I've talked about this before on another podcast episode, actually. And I actually deleted that podcast episode, because I deleted a bunch of my podcast episodes because I'm like really starting fresh for the new year. Anyways, I felt something crawl up the back of my throat, and it felt like a second uvula. Like, it was not me. It was like separate. It wasn't me. It was not attached to me. Or sorry, it was in me, but it wasn't me, if that makes sense. And it felt weird and uncomfortable. Like, it didn't feel, I was like, this feels weird. Like, I was like, my mind was trying to make sense of what was going on. I was like, oh my God, are they activating something in my throat? You know, like, that's kind of what I thought. Because this thing was sitting there, and it started breathing on its own. Like, I'm not even fucking with you. It started breathing on its own. And I didn't know what the fuck it was. And I thought that they were activating something in my throat. But in hindsight, it wasn't like a nice feeling. Do you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like a lovely feeling. Like, it really felt uncomfortable. And I was just like, okay, this feels really weird. But I just let it be. And And in hindsight, I realized 444 as I looked down on my laptop. In hindsight, I realized that what that was, Mother Aya was showing me. She was showing me that I had something that I needed to face. I had a demon, quite literally, that had a life of its own in me. That had a life of its own. When I tell you it was breathing on its own, this was breathing on its own. And when it comes to demons and when it comes to things in this physical realm, you know, we have free will here. Our guides and angels can only help us so much. And when it comes to a demon, what I came to learn when it comes to a demon, they can't just banish it for you, because when you go, they can't get rid of it for you. When you do ayahuasca, some of you might think like, Brittany, why wouldn't Mother Aya just like get rid of it for you? You'd think that if you do that, she would do that, because if you know anything about ayahuasca ceremonies, like literally like miracles happen. Like it's crazy. The power of that medicine, the power of that spirit. I have so much respect, like so much respect. And I'll just leave it there. Like, whoa. And what I came to realize when it comes with demons, they can only, like, she made me aware of it. You know what I mean? Like, she made it so fucking clear to me that there was something that had a life of its own residing within me. At the time, I didn't know what it was. At the time, I was like, my mind is trying to make sense of what the fuck that was. And I, immediately was like, oh, they're activating something in my throat. Because I also got, during that journey, I also got the message of being able to speak in tongues. So I associated the two together. And in hindsight, I realized that like, I didn't need my throat to be activated to speak in tongues. What they were telling me is I can do it already. I've been, you know what I mean? Like I've been doing it. That's a whole side note. But I made that association of the two within my mind. But that was my mind associating that feeling of the throat and the speaking in tongues, when in actuality, those two should not have been connected. Do you know what I mean? And this is why like integration and reflection is so important when you do journeys. And that's something that I've really, I really made a point to integrate a lot, like everything that's happened for me this year. That's like a side note. That's something that I'll talk about like on another episode. But yeah, I'll do a whole other episode on like psychedelics and stuff like that, because it's really important to talk about. And it's important to talk about all perspectives, because I don't think everyone should just be going off and doing journeys, because there's a lot of danger to that as well. Anyways, back to what I was talking about with the demon. So at the time, I didn't realize what it was, but Spirit made it very clear to me. Mother Aya made it very clear to me. Honey, you have something here. It's uncomfortable for a reason. And yes, it has a life of its own. It was breathing on its own. Fast forward. My friends come to visit me from out of town, and we did a journey together. We did a journey together. Not all of us, but one remained sober, because she chose that she didn't want to, which is, like another thing, to each their own, right? Like, no, it's not necessary for everybody. Everybody's paths are different. Plant medicine will be on some people's paths. And plant medicine is not for other people on their paths. And that's okay. That is okay. Just want to make that really clear, because like, I know a lot of people, like I talk about it all the time, like how I've had great experiences on plant medicines. And if it makes you feel uncomfortable, like know that you don't have to have experiences with plant medicine to have really amazing spiritual experiences. I've had so many beautiful spiritual experiences not on plant medicine. Like truly I have. And so I want you to know they're not necessary. It's not necessary. So if you feel like it's not for you, that's okay. Like don't feel like you have to do it to experience these amazing spiritual experiences. Like it's not necessary. Okay. I just really needed to say that. So now that I've said that, I can continue. And I'm not going to get into detail of that night, but that night I felt the demon again. And at the time I didn't know it was a demon, but I felt it again. And my friend, one of them, the one that actually didn't take the mushroom, she knew what was going on. She knew before I did. And I'm getting chills. And it's crazy because she was talking to me, but I knew she wasn't talking to me. She was talking to the demon that was inside of me, because there was an entity inside of me. And some of you might be like, oh my God, you were possessed. I guess so. Like, if that's what like being possessed is, then yes. But the way they make possessions out to be in the movies is so false. It's not that way at all. And I'm going to get into that in a moment. My friend realized it before I did. And I'm trying to remember. I remember feeling it. And basically, this thing would come out in things that I would do. And in hindsight, I'm realizing that those things, like, that wasn't Brittany. That wasn't Brittany. That was this entity that had created a life of its own, that was residing within me, that was like taking over my brain. And it had me truly believing things that were not true. And I'll give you an example. Okay, let me rewind a little bit. So she realized it, and I realized what was going on because I have a lot of respect for her. And I'm thinking, like, what is she telling me right now? Like, what is she saying to me right now? And I was like listening to her. But this thing was also, it's like this thing, which I'll also call the ego, was also coming in and didn't want to listen to her. But Brittany was listening. You know what I mean? And Brittany really had to put her ego aside to come to this understanding. I don't remember the exact timeline of it, and me and the other two girls, or other two women, I should say, we will do an episode on this together because this is really important to talk about, but I'm gonna wait to give like the super in-depth details about what happened. I'm gonna wait until like the three of us can get together and do the episode together. It's just not worth me diving too much into detail right now without them, just because I really respect what they have to say as well, and they were here and they were experiencing it as well. But basically what ended up happening that night, and we knew it was really divinely led. It was really fucking divinely led, like so divinely led, just because we had such a calling. Like, all of us knew it needed to happen. We didn't know why. We essentially performed like an exorcism that night. And I'm laughing because like that sounds fucking crazy. I know that sounds crazy. Like, Brittany, what do you mean? But we kind of did, I guess, like, for lack of better word, like an exorcism, because I came to the understanding that there was a demon inside of me. I had a demon. I straight up had a demon, and it had a life of its own, and it was feeding on my energy. And I came to the realization that night, and with their help, we got rid of it. And I'm going to get into the nitty gritty of the details, like I said, on another episode with them. But let me dive into what this demon was, where it stemmed from, what a demon actually is. And when I tell you it's nothing to be afraid of, it's nothing to be afraid of. And a lot of you might be looking at me like, Brittany, are you crazy? What the fuck are you talking about? You just are telling me that there was an entity inside of you. You felt it crawl up your neck. You're telling me that you had an exorcism, and you're telling us not to be afraid. Yes. Yes, I'm telling you not to be afraid. And let me explain why. So when I felt that entity, because I felt it the first night when I did. The first time I felt it was on one of my ayahuasca journeys, when Mother Aya, when Spirit made it very clear to me, which it didn't click then, but that was so crucial, because when I came to the realization of the demon that night, like, that happening was so crucial for it to click into place what it was. Do you know what I mean? Like, they lined that up for me beautifully. And I felt it again the night my friends were in town. And I feel like the only reason why I was able to feel that is because I was on plant medicine. Like, both times I was on plant medicine. And often when you're on plant medicine, it's like you experience these things that are like otherworldly. You know what I mean? Like, that's otherworldly. To have something like crawl out the back of your throat, like, that's gross. That's otherworldly. Like, I believe that the other realms were at play there. I can't really explain that, but that's not something I like experienced on a day-to-day basis. It's not like all this thing that was in me was crawling up the back of my throat like all the time and I was like, ooh, possessed. Like, no, it did not work that way. What I also need to make clear is the demon, that entity that had a life of its own, I created that. I created that within me. That was not something outside of me that latched onto me. It was not a parasite. It was not something that attached to me from outside. I created that entity within myself. My ego created it. It was created because I had a wound. I had a really damn deep wound that was not acknowledged, that was not recognized, and was not given love. So I created, quite literally, an entity within myself to protect myself from that wound. And that's how demons are created. It's created from a place that has not been given love, that has not received love. And I'm going to talk about it exactly. Like, I'll give you guys like I'll give you guys the details on it. But that's what a demon is. So a lot of people have fucking demons. A lot of people have demons. And what is kind of scary, and I'm not trying to scare people, but yeah, they take on a consciousness and a life of their own. They do. And it's not that they all of a sudden overtake you, because that's not the case. And it's not like people get possessed the way you see them in, you know what I mean, like movies and stuff like that. But what was the information that was impressed upon me from spirit was these demons that are created within oneself, if they are continually neglected and depending on what the wound is, do you know what I mean, and how deep it is, this entity will grow bigger and bigger depending on how much attention it's being given. Do you know what I mean? So if this wound is really not being given any attention, and if anything, if this wound is getting worse and worse, like if you're in an environment or you're doing things where this wound is getting worse and worse, this demon, this entity is going to get bigger and bigger because it's there to protect you. It's there to protect you. Yes, demons are ugly. Why? Because they haven't been given love. But it's like, how can you not love a thing that was created within yourself to protect you? You need to learn how to face your demons and love your demons, and that's how you get rid of them. However, the scary thing is yes, they take on a life of their own. And what was impressed upon me, and no, I am not a doctor. No, I cannot prove this scientifically or anything like that. So I just making that very clear. This is based on what was impressed upon me. Okay, so my opinion. And if it resonates with you, it does. And if it doesn't, that's okay. But this is why people do things that they do. This is why people become murderers, serial killers. This is why people become pedophiles. This is why people, everything. This is why when people drink alcohol, their demons are bigger. Things are bigger. This is why things happen. This is why people lose control. The demons get to them. Yeah, their inner demons get to them. And this is what can happen if you keep those parts of yourself hidden and you don't show those parts love. Do you know what I mean? So this is why healing is so damn fucking important for you, for everybody. Because everybody has demons to a certain extent. Everybody has demons. And I'm not trying to like scare people at all, but with my experience, you know, this demon got his consciousness. I'm saying again, I created it. It was within me. My ego created this, but it wasn't truly Brittany. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't truth to Brittany. And when I came to these realizations, I'm like, holy shit. I said, I needed to come to the realization myself. And I needed to acknowledge that I had a demon. I needed to acknowledge it first and really be like, whoa. This is not rooted in truth. And I needed to say, like, you need to leave. You are not welcome here. And then Brittany needed to give love to that wound and continue to give love to that wound, because there is no room for another demon to be created within myself. Do you know what I mean? Because if you say bye to the demon or whatever, it's just going to recreate itself, rebuild itself if you don't heal the wounds. So demons, they're not this scary outside thing that's like, I'm going to come and get you. Sorry. It's not that. It's not that. We're so much more powerful than that. We cannot we're so powerful. Nothing can get a hold of us like that. Do you know what I mean? The only things that can get a hold of us is the things we allow to get a hold of us. And often those things are created within ourselves. And we often don't even realize that, though, because we create them, it becomes a part of us almost. It becomes a part of us, and it separates us more and more from what is true. Something else that was impressed upon me, like, how I said this is how people become murderers and things like that, like this consciousness takes over their mind, right? And it takes over their brain, because again, they created it within themselves. So even though it does take on a life of its own, it was created within that person. So that person really feels as though it is them, even though it is not them, because we are all love. We are all love. We are source. We are of God, and God's source is nothing but love. That is who we are. So these things created within us, they are not actually us. You know what I mean? They are not actually us, but it really, really feels as though it is us, because it is us that creates that from within us. And when people are able to recognize that, I feel as though a lot of change can happen. But it's hard to admit sometimes. It's hard to admit that you might have like a demon or two, But something else that was impressed upon me is, and again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not claiming this to be fact. This is just what was impressed upon me through what I've experienced and through meditation and whatnot, is multiple personalities. People, it's the same kind of a thing. And again, demons are, I don't want to label them all as demons, but it's like these entities, the ugly ones you could label as demons, but these entities that are created within oneself that do create a consciousness of their own. And because it's created within the person believes them all to be of them. But they're just created to protect them. They're created not out of love. They are created from the ego. And this is when it's important to do a lot of self-reflection, because we all have demons. We all have wounds, all of us. And the only way to really get rid of those things is to give those parts of you love and to show it love, because it is love that conquers all. And yeah, the more you ignore these demons, these parts of you that need attention, that are quite literally screaming for attention, they're only going to get uglier and uglier until you really give it that attention that it's screaming for. These entities created within you, again, they're created to protect you. So they are going to scream for your attention the only way they know how. And it is not a way that is based out of love. Do you know what I mean? So it's going to be uglier and uglier every time. It needs love. Everything needs love. Everyone needs love. All parts of you need love. All parts of you. Okay, so I'm going to just talk about this demon that I created within myself, so you guys can, wow, and it's 3:33. I don't know if you were able to see that, but 3:33, my number. I'm going to talk about how this demon was created within me, so you guys have like an actual example, and I'm going to talk about how it did take on a life of its own, and how I'm going to tell you the part that I realized was not rooted in truth, and what I came to realize was the truth afterwards. So let's dive in. So I struggled with a lot of body image issues for a really long time. Like, I struggled with body image for as long as I could remember. Growing up, I always felt like I was the fat one. I have two sisters. They were all stick thin, like compared to me. My mom is quite naturally thin. My brother is very athletic. My dad very athletic, like, and not that I wasn't, but I was the bigger one, or I felt that I was. And looking back, people are like, Brittany, you're crazy. Like, what are you talking about? You know, my reality was skewed, but that's really how I perceived myself. And I remember growing up, you know, once on the lips, forever on the hips, you know, and stuff like my parent. I just disclaimer, like, I'm not blaming anyone, not blaming my parents. My parents truly love their kids more than anything, and everything they do, they truly believe is what is the best for their child. So I just disclaimer, but I do have a lot of body image issues that do stem from childhood, and part of it is that, but also religion. So growing up religious, I felt like ashamed of my body. Like I felt like a walking sex symbol. I felt like if I would look good, I felt like it's like I struggled with binge eating as well. It was this weird cycle because. And then I did bodybuilding competitions. Like it was just so many things where if I was physically, let's say, fit and in shape, I'd feel good because I'd feel like, oh, I'm worth it now. Like I'm not the fat one in the family. But at the same time, I'd have this other feeling of like disgust within my own body because I felt like a walking sex symbol. I felt like, you know, like, oh, you can't show cleavage. Like growing up really, really Catholic, like I felt like, you know, like everyone just wanted to look at me and I felt like ashamed of my body. So when I looked good, it was this weird mixed feeling, but I felt so uncomfortable looking good because of the shame around sexuality and religion with me that I would just start binge eating. I'd binge eat and it's like I had no control, and then I'd gain all this weight back, and then I'd feel shitty about myself because I felt like the fat one again. So then I'd lose this weight, and then it was just this like endless like loop, like a loop I still struggle with to this day to a certain extent, if I'm being completely honest. And you know, it's been a part. Well, yeah, this is a big reason why the fucking demon was created. Excuse my language, but like this is huge. This is a huge gaping wound for me that I'm healing. Okay, I want to be very clear. I'm healing, and it's been a process of healing now for a while, like a long time. Anyway, so that's kind of just how it started. And then I did my first bodybuilding competition in like 2013, I think 2014, like around that time. And fast forward, I ended up doing another one a couple years later. I always struggled with body image. I struggled with food for a really long time as well. And I really associated my body image with my self-worth. Like I directly correlated the two, especially because growing up, I really felt because I didn't look like my family, I just felt like I just associated with my self-worth. Like my self-worth was like non-existent. It really wasn't. It is now. Baby, I know my worth now. It's been a process, but she's here. She remembers. She's back at home. But anyways, going back. I guess my point is I'm not trying to like give a sob story. Like I'm good. Your girl is good. But I'm just giving the history, the truth of the history. So now I'm losing my train of thought. Oh yeah. Okay. So fast forward. I've always struggled with it. Always struggled with body image. It's just always been a thing, whatever. Okay. Putting that kind of like on the side, I then found spirituality, and I went through so many changes over the last couple of years. I'll do another podcast episode of my spiritual awakening story, and I'll talk about the whole story. So I'm going to leave the details for that episode as well. But when I tell you like my life changed within a really short period of time, my life fucking changed and changed again within a really short period of time. I went from being a high school teacher, a full-time high school teacher in my dream teaching position. Okay, I actually got like full-time PE. The month I quit was like the first contract of like full-time PE, and that's all I had ever wanted. But I was a teacher, high school teacher for 5 years. So I quit my career. I dropped out of a master's program for counseling. I was living with my ex at the time, one who I thought I was going to marry, like for sure. I thought we were going to get married, and I thought we were going to have kids. Like we had just moved into a townhouse together. We broke up. I started my own business. I started working for myself. I then moved into an apartment with a roommate, and, you know, she's like a sister to me. And I had a whole year there. And then I sold all of my things, like sold everything down to like a suitcase. And I went Airbnb hopping for 6 months. So and then now I'm back at home for the holidays. And then I'm going to be getting my own apartment in January. But I'll save that for the life update, which I'm going to be doing now at the end of my episodes. Okay. Life updates at the end of the episodes. For those who care about it. But anyways, so within a year and a half, lost a huge relationship, completely changed careers, went from being a high school teacher to working for myself, dropped out of a master's program for counseling, moved, had a whole year in a different life with a roommate, sold all of my things, literally went down to a suitcase, and then Airbnb hopped for 6 months, almost 6 months. So much can change in a year. And during that time, exponential growth happened for me and my spiritual journey. Like, that was my spiritual awakening, dark night of the soul. Like, that was that whole thing. I thought I was spiritually awake before that. I was wrong. Silly little me. Silly Brittany. You knew nothing. I still feel like I know nothing. But, yeah, it's so funny thinking back. Like, I thought I was so awake. No, honey. No, honey. Little did you know. Anyways, and I feel like I'll be saying the same thing to myself in a year from now. But through that growth, this piece of me that still wasn't given love, wasn't given the attention that it needed, this entity started, it's interesting, it grew, my ego grew in alignment with my spiritual awakening. And this is something else that I want to talk about, because often with people's spiritual awakenings, like, you'll notice how like they develop an ego, and these people are like, ugh, it's like, why is it with spiritual awakenings and people being really spiritual, why is it that they have such a big ego associated? This is why. It's because if you're not doing the healing and the shadow work part of it, as you're awakening, your ego is going to grow really big. That's what happened to me, and I'm going to say it. I had a big fucking ego. And I'll say it time and time again. I did. I remember going back on some videos and being like, oh my God, this is gross. Like, I'm embarrassed by this. And I'll say that time and time again. And a lot of you might be like, Brittany, this is why, when you're going through things, you shouldn't post about it. But one thing that I will say is I always vowed to be authentic with you guys, always. And I always was. Even if I'm looking back and being like, that's embarrassing, I was always authentic, and my intentions were always pure. And that's something that I can say with confidence. With that said, my ego was fucking huge, and I wasn't aware of it. I wasn't even fucking aware of it. And this entity, and I'm calling it an entity because it did create a life of its own, but it was created from me. Okay. So it's like, some of you might be like, or some people might think like, well, you can't just say, when you do bad things, or, you can't just take off the blame and blame it on this entity. Like, no, I agree with you. I agree with you, but at the same time, I do believe that this entity is separate from you. It's not you. It's because it's not rooted in love, it's not rooted in truth, and that's who you are. You are love. We are of source. We are, that's who we are from. That's what we are from. We are our love. We are all source. So it's like, it's not you, but you did create it. So I do feel like it is important to take ownership of it, because you created it. It's like, that's your creation. You know what I mean? What's it doing? Get a hold of it, so to speak. So I just want to make that very clear. So when I talk about it being like separate from me, it is, but I'm also not like trying to take away from the fact that it was me that did that, though. Do you know what I mean? Let me know if that makes sense. I just kind of want to disclaim that there a little, like, just to make that clear. But when you go and you have all of these spiritual awakenings, and for me, like, because of like a lot of the journeys that I've been doing, that really, really aided in my spiritual awakening. And I know it was guided divinely. I know that like that was my path, and that was my path for a reason. And I was supposed to experience that. I was supposed to experience a big fucking ego so that I could see it and understand it and be like, oh shit. You know what I mean? Like, I know that I was meant to experience these things, and I was meant to post about it and talk about it, because I'll be here and I'll talk about, like, I'll openly say, like, look, like, I was not, like, that was not rooted in truth. Do you know what I mean? And like, I'll openly say that. I'll be like, I was wrong about this. There's no shame in that. And I think that's something else that's like really important. Like, nobody's perfect. I mean, we are perfect. We are perfect in all that we are, but nobody's perfect. You know what I mean? So to speak, in that sense. And that's okay. We're not supposed to be. And I think that it's just important to be open, honest, and have pure intentions. That's all you can do. And when you make a mistake, when you're wrong about things, be honest about it. Own up to it. It's okay. That's okay. That's how we grow. It's how we learn. Anyways, so going back to what I was saying before, what I realized is my ego was growing a lot with my spiritual awakening. Like, I had a really quick and fast spiritual awakening, and my ego was growing at the same time. Don't get me wrong. I was doing healing. I was doing so much healing along with it, which is why integration is so important. And I know that I came to all of these realizations because I do integrate, because I do really ask for help from spirit too. Like, through this time, I was also aware that my ego was growing, and I would ask, like, I asked spirit, I was like, help me get rid of this, like, help me keep my ego in check. I was verbally asking for help, and I wasn't afraid to admit that. Do you know what I mean? I was like, keep me in check, keep me in line. And I was asking for that help, because if you ask, like, they'll deliver. So again, I know that everything I experienced was really divine. I would never take anything back, but like, because of my journey, I really understand the dangers of diving into plant medicine really fast, and maybe, you know what I mean? Because I definitely did a lot of journeys in a short period of time. Again, that was meant for me. I was supposed to do that. It was very divinely led. I would not recommend that for people though, because I see the danger in it now, because my ego grew, that demon grew. And as I was awakening spiritually, a lot of mystical things were happening to me, like sober, which is why you don't need plant medicine, because this stuff happens sober all the time as well. Like, spirit, what I thought was spirit, was started moving my body. And let me talk about that, because, you know, I was posting those dance videos. I was like, it is not me. I am in, trance mediumship. I was talking about it being trance mediumship. I was talking about spirit moving my body, and I was wrong. That was not spirit. And I truly thought it was spirit, but that entity, that consciousness that I created, fully believed that it was something outside of me, because it was protecting me. Because Brittany didn't think she was really like, she didn't think people would listen, or she didn't think people would hear her. She didn't think her in and of herself was like worth being listened to, or being watched. So it had to be something outside of herself, if that makes sense. And I didn't realize that. Like, I fully, like, when I tell you I believed that was spirit, I fully believed that. And also because when these things happen, when I'm dancing, and when they're moving me, it really feels like it's not me, because it's like I'm tapping into another part of my brain that maybe I haven't accessed before, or whatever it may be. I know now what I'm doing. I know that I'm tapping into the wisdom of my higher self, which is why it feels like it's not me, because I'm tapping into the quantum field, and I'm tapping into other realities of Brittany. I'm tapping into a version of Brittany, a timeline where Brittany is a dancer, and my higher self has that knowledge. So I'm tapping into that, and I'm pulling from that knowledge, and I'm allowing my higher self to guide me, because my higher self has that knowledge. So my higher self is taking over. So it's me, it's within me, it's all within me, but it's not something outside of me. But I fully believed that it was something outside of me. And I was like building this ego, like it was feeding my ego. It was feeding that piece of me. It was like, I felt really special. Like, look at me, spirit's moving me. And I felt like I was being seen, which is a deep wound for me. A really deep wound, and this ties into that wound. It ties into like the body image and all of these things. I also really liked what it was also feeding was, I really liked how I looked physically when I was dancing, when spirit was moving me. And again, that was feeding my ego. That was feeding the wound where Brittany associated her self-worth with what she looked like. So it was feeding these things that weren't true. It was feeding things not true. And I realized, and I came to the realization because of my friends that, were there that night, that it wasn't spirit moving me. I I realized I had an entity, and they helped me. They were so integral in that night, but I did also need to come to the realization on my own, which is, again, we'll talk about that on another episode. That's for another day. But I fully believed that spirit was like moving my body. And like when I realized that this entity made me believe things that were not rooted in truth, because when I like fully believed that, I was like, oh my God, like, is that what psychosis is, when you fully believe things that aren't true? You know, because it made me tie psychosis into there. And holy shit, did I do like so much reflecting after. It was really I'm so grateful. It was probably one of like, it was a really emotionally hard experience for me. Like it was really emotionally hard. Like I can't even explain how hard it was. Like I felt like I was raped spiritually. And that might sound dramatic, but literally, like, I was on the floor wailing. Like, when I realized it was, like, something that had its own consciousness that made me fully believe things that were not true, I felt raped. And I can say that because I've been raped. So I know what it feels like. I felt that again. And it was, like, so violating. It was so violating. And I would not wish it on anybody. I would not wish that on anybody. Anyways, it was a huge wake-up call for me. It was a fucking huge wake-up call for me. And with a lot of like reflection afterward, you know, I got a lot more downloads, a lot more realizations. You know, I learned how to love the demon. I learned how to love it because it was created within me, for me, because of me. I learned how it is so important to really make sure you are doing the shadow work and integration while you are on your spiritual awakening journey. I came to the understanding and realization of how important community is, because that's another thing, especially during your spiritual awakening. So many people isolate themselves. People should not be isolating themselves on their spiritual awakening journey, because we need to stay rooted during our spiritual awakening. We need to stay rooted and fucking grounded during our spiritual awakenings. And you know what helps with that? Community helps with that. Friends helps with that. Loved ones help with that. People who care for you help with that. I was isolated for a chunk of it, which can actually be dangerous. Talking about psychosis and things like that. That is why staying grounded is so important. This is why Spirit also had me near the ocean. Like I literally went to the ocean and cleansed myself almost every day. Like I really made sure I stayed grounded in that sense. And thank God, like I connected with nature more than I ever have, because I needed to. Like they kept me here. Because I was really kind of up in the etherical plane, so to speak, you know. I was good. Like I was good the whole time, and I know I chose this path for myself because I knew that I would be able to get through it, and I knew that I'd be able to come back down to earth and like integrate, and then I want to say like teach and help others. Like I know it was all divinely led, but like I just like would never recommend people do it the way I did it, you know. Like I would, you know, yeah. After what I've learned, that's really what I'll say. And during our spiritual awakenings, we need to stay grounded. We're having a physical experience for a reason. We're here for a reason. We're here to learn how to master both. It's not just staying up in the airy-fairy. It's enjoying this 3D world as well. And we don't need to make spirituality like your life. You know what I mean? Like for me, I feel like I have a calling here. No, I know I have a calling. Like I'm here to be a teacher, and I know that. That's just a part of my calling. We all have different paths, different roads. All roads lead to the same place. One is not better than the other. I just know that I'm supposed to be here in, I'm supposed to teach in a spiritual way, so to speak. I just know that that's my calling. And everyone's are different, but I know that for me, like, because I'm here to teach, like I also needed to dive into this world 200% so that people feel comfortable to dive in 5 or 10%. Do you know what I mean? So I don't expect people to, it's like people shouldn't have the goal of People shouldn't have the goal of experiencing what I've experienced. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that you do, but I just always want to make that very clear, because your road is made specifically for you. So follow your joys, follow your passions, and know that like each and every one of us can have these beautiful, mystical, beautiful experiences with spirit. But going back to what I was saying before, this whole experience just really made me realize how people build such egos. And what I'm realizing, what it is with the spiritual awakening, is as you awaken more and more, you're opening up to these things more and more. But if you are not, because you're remembering how powerful you are, and we are all really, really freaking powerful. Like, and this is why people build an ego when they awaken spiritually, because as we awaken spiritually, as we remember, we are reminded of our power. We are reminded that we are royalty. We are reminded that we are kings and queens. And that's why people are looked at like, oh, like I'm a king, I'm a queen. And people look at them like, oh my God, they're so full of it. They're so cocky. And it's because as you spiritually awaken, you are reminded of those things and you really feel how powerful you are. And for those of you who have experienced it, you know what I'm talking about, because that feeling that you're given is so hard to erase from your memory. You can't erase it from your memory. You can't articulate it with words, but they impress upon you this feeling. And it's truth, though. It is true. We are so powerful. However, this is why healing is equally as important, because if there's parts of you that are not healed, the ego would have created things around these. The ego would have created a consciousness around these wounds to protect you. And this power, this feeling powerful, is going to feed the ego. It's going to feed the parts of you that are unhealed, and that's going to grow as well. And it's so important to do the healing, because if you really do the shadow work and heal those wounds, all parts of you, there's not going to be an ego to feed. You're going to understand that you're really powerful, but because you're healed, because you are healed, because you are not looking for that external validation, because you do no longer need that external validation, you will fully understand, and you're not going to feel more powerful than anybody else. Because yes, we're really powerful, but when people feel they are better than or more powerful than others, it is because there's a part of them that is still unhealed, and they are seeking that validation externally, and it makes them feel that they are better than, because it is feeding that ego. It is feeding the demon. It is feeding the part of them that has not been given love and that is desperate for attention. So spiritual awakening, the integration work is so critical, because with that comes the healing. And when you're really healing, you're not allowing these entities that have a life of their own, you're not allowing them to get bigger, because you're giving it love. And by doing that, you're getting rid of it, and you're falling closer and closer in alignment with truth and in alignment with yourself. Coming home to self. Coming home to self is shedding layers of you that are not rooted in truth, shedding layers of you that are no longer needed. These consciousnesses, these entities that have been created within yourself that are no longer needed, you're shedding them. And yes, some of them are ugly. Some of them could be labeled as demons, but not all of them are. But that's how spirit showed me what a demon is. So yes, demons are real. Yes, they do create a life of their own. However, they are nothing to fear, because they are created within you and they are created for you. However, we don't want them. You know what I mean? You don't want to have an ego. Or I shouldn't say you don't want to have an ego, but you don't want to have a demon, an entity that has such a big life of its own, because it's ugly. It's ugly, and it's not rooted in truth, and it's not rooted in love. And that's all anybody needs is love. We all just need love, including your demons. Including your demons. Oh. Did you hear that crack? So I just cracked my neck. I used to think it was spirit cracking my neck for me, but now I just tap into the wisdom of my higher self, and like my higher self literally will just like adjust my whole back for me. My higher self will do breath work for me. Like my higher self takes over my body and like makes me good. I like never know what the session's going to be like. Anyways, let me know if you have questions about that, because it's really interesting. And when I say my higher self takes over my body, it does. It's like wisdom, not from Brittany, but from higher knowledge. Like I would never crack my neck before. There's no way in hell. But now it's like my body just does it and knows how to do it. And it feels safe doing it. Anyways. But really quick, going back to what I was saying, the spiritual awakening and, the ego, this is why often people who spiritually awaken have a really big ego. It's because they are awakening and they are remembering who they are, but they're not really doing the work necessary to keep their ego under control. They're not doing the shadow work. And this is what shadow work is. It's the dark parts of you, the dark side of you. You got to love all sides of you, including the dark. Otherwise, you're going to be out of balance. And this is why balance is so important, because we got to balance the ego. We got to balance it. And when it's balanced, we understand that everybody is powerful. We are all equal. There is literally no hierarchy. There is none. And there's room for every single one of us to succeed and to be successful and to live out and to fulfill our dreams. There's room for all of us too. Why? Because all of our roads are different. We all have different goals, different dreams, different aspirations. Even if they're the same, they're different because you're unique and what you bring to the table is different and your perspective is different. So what you can create quite literally will be different than anybody else because it's not coming from anybody else. It's coming from you. And that is special. Editing Brittany here really quick. So one thing I forgot to mention is I remember thinking to myself, when was this demon created? Like, when did this entity create this life of its own? When did it start? Because I knew it stemmed from wounds of not being seen, wounds of not being heard, and like body image wounds and self-worth wounds. And it's like a wound like that. And what popped into my mind was when I did the bodybuilding competition. And I was like, I think it was created when I did the bodybuilding competition, which was in 2013. But I didn't know for sure. How could I know for sure? Fast forward, I'm cleaning out my phone and the photos on my phone. I'm cleaning it out for the new year. I'm just getting rid of a lot of photos. And I come across 2 photos that I took while in San Diego, and I'm getting chills. No, 3 photos, and I will attach them here if I could find them. But I found a photo, 2 photos, a photo of this mural that I felt I wanted to take a photo of. And underneath it, you'll see in the image, it says demon and it says 2013 on it. And then the next photo over, which I took on the same day, I took a photo of this demon looking thing. I'll put the photo up here as well. And I'm getting chills as I'm talking about this. So I simply just took that as confirmation that yes, Brittany, this entity, this quote unquote demon was created back in 2013 when you started your bodybuilding competition. That it was at that stage in my life where my wound was so deep, and it was so deep at that time, and it needed attention so bad that's when I created that entity within myself. That's when I created that demon within myself. It was then created to protect me, and it fed off the energy that I got while I was doing my bodybuilding competition. It fed off the energy that it fed off the attention that I got because of my body change, because my body was changing and I was getting attention, and it fed off of that attention. And it grew from there. And then it just kind of stuck with me for all of my 20s. And it quite literally consumed my life, body image, not being seen, not being heard, associating my self-worth to my body image. When I tell you this was all consuming, this has been all consuming for years of my life. And finally, since I've gotten rid of this entity, it's it truly is different. The energy about me is different. I see my body differently. Quite literally, this entity is not here anymore, and I see myself differently. It's crazy. With that said, I'm now really religiously working on healing this wound. Do you know what I mean? Now that this is gone, I'm healing this wound so that something is not recreated within me. However, I realized that that's when it was created, because it needed so much love. And I remember during that time too, my brother, I was about to say brother-in-law, but my sister and her boyfriend, who's basically my brother as well, felt called to reach out to me, and I'll see if I could find the screenshots or if I could put in the voice note. I think they sent me a voice note. They were worried that I was getting possessed, and they felt really called to tell me, like, to be careful of demons. And this was during the summer, and this is when my spiritual awakening was happening. This was also when this demon was getting bigger, when my ego was getting bigger. So it's just like really the timing of it was all very divine. They were supposed to warn me when they did. And anyways, my battery's about to die, so I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to leave a life update for the next video. Happy New Year. I love you guys so much. Let me know what you thought of this episode. And until next time,
this is
bye.
Me, I'm so royal, and you all wanna be round. Yeah, you all wanna be round. Round a champion, I got